Lyra had always been taught one simple truth. Humans were dangerous. She learned this truth when she was very young. Her teachers said humans were violent. Her leaders said humans brought war. The story showed humans as cold-eyed creatures who destroyed worlds and felt no regret. Every lesson ended the same way. Fear them. Avoid them. Never trust them. So when Lyra stood inside the massive space station Orion Gate and heard that a human delegation had arrived, her hands began to shake. The station was floating near the edge of known space. Outside the wide glass walls, stars burned like silent fires. Inside, dozens of alien species moved through the long halls. Some had scales. Some had glowing skin. Some floated instead of walking. Lyra belonged to the Alari, a soft-skinned species sensitive to cold and strong emotions. She pulled her thin cloak tighter around her body as the station lights dimmed. "Humans are here," someone whispered. Lyra's breath caught in her chest. She turned and saw them. They were taller than most species around them. Their bodies were solid and heavy. Their faces were strange hard lines, forward eyes, unreadable expressions. They wore dark uniforms with symbols stitched in silver. Metal boots echoed softly against the floor. So this is what monsters look like, Lyra thought. Her heart beat faster. Her fingers trembled. The temperature inside the hall suddenly felt much colder. Lyra tried to move away, but the crowd shifted. A loud sound echoed through the station, an announcement in multiple languages. At the same moment, a cold air system malfunctioned. A sharp wave of freezing air rushed through the hall. Lyra gasped. Her species was not built for extreme cold. Pain spread through her arms. Her legs weakened. Around her, other aliens stepped back, activating shields or thermal gear. Lyra had nothing. She stumbled toward the wall, her vision blurring. Her breathing became shallow. Fear wrapped around her tighter than the cold. This is how it ends, she thought. Alone, near humans. She slid down against the wall and curled in on herself. Her body shook uncontrollably. Tears filled her eyes, but she tried to hold them back. Alari were taught never to cry in front of outsiders. Footsteps approached, heavy footsteps. Lyra squeezed, her eyes shut. "Please don't notice me," she begged silently. But someone stopped in front of her. She slowly looked up. A human stood there. He was taller than her, broad-shouldered, with short dark hair and tired eyes. There was no weapon in his hands, no anger on his face, only concern. He knelt down, slowly, carefully, like someone approaching a frightened animal. "Hey," he said softly. Lyra didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't sharp. It was gentle. She tried to pull away, but her body was too weak. The human noticed her shaking. He glanced at the broken temperature panel flashing red on the wall. Then he looked back at her. Without saying anything else, he removed his outer jacket. It was thick, dark blue, clearly made for warmth. Lyra's eyes widened. The human leaned forward and carefully placed the jacket around her shoulders. The warmth hit her instantly. Her breath caught not from pain this time, but from shock. Heat spread through her chest, down her arms, into her fingers. The shaking slowly eased. She stared at the jacket, then up at the human. "Why?" she whispered in her own language. The human didn't understand her words, but he seemed to understand the question. He gave a small, awkward smile. "Cold," he said, pointing gently. "You need this more than I do." Lyra's vision blurred. Again, this time she couldn't stop the tears. They fell freely, warm drops sliding down her cheeks. Her shoulders shook, not from cold, but from something she had never felt before. Kindness. The human didn't pull away. He didn't look uncomfortable. He simply stayed there, kneeling in front of her, making sure the jacket stayed in place. Around them, other aliens watched in silence. This was not the human they had been warned about. Lyra pressed her fingers into The fabric of the jacket. It was worn, marked by travel and use. It smelled faintly of metal and something unfamiliar home. Maybe. She looked at the human again. For the first time in her life, she wondered if the stories were wrong. High above them, the station alarms quieted as systems began to stabilize. The cold air slowly faded. But Lyra remained where she was, wrapped in human warmth, her tears falling without shame. And in that moment, something deep inside her shifted. The universe suddenly felt less cold, and humans no longer felt like monsters. Lyra sat quietly against the station wall, wrapped in the human's jacket. The cold was gone now, but her hand still rested tightly on the fabric, as if letting go might bring the fear back. Around her, the Orion Gate station slowly returned to life. Lights brightened, emergency panels shut down. Voices returned to normal levels. But something invisible had changed. People were watching her. Not with fear, not with anger, with confusion. The human remained near her, standing now, his posture relaxed. His name tag read Ethan Hawley, though Lyra could not read human symbols yet. He rubbed his arms slightly. Without the jacket, he felt the cold himself, but he didn't complain. Lyra noticed. Her species was trained to notice emotions, fear, anger, deceit. But this emotion on the human's face felt unfamiliar. It was calm concern. A station medic finally arrived. A tall insect-like alien with glowing eyes. The medic scanned Lyra quickly. She will recover, the medic said. But she should not have been exposed to that temperature. The medic turned sharp eyes toward the human. Why did you intervene? Ethan shrugged slightly. She was cold, he said simply. That answer made no sense to the crowd. Aliens exchanged looks. Some whispered. Some frowned. Helping without gain was rare in space. Lyra slowly stood up, using the wall for support. The jacket hung loosely on her small frame. It was far too big for her, but that only made it feel safer. She looked at Ethan again. You are human? She asked carefully, using the translator bead at her throat. Yes, Ethan replied. And you're Ilari, right? Lyra nodded. Her people had lost much in recent years. Everyone knew that. I was told, Lyra said slowly, choosing her words, that humans do not care for others. Ethan blinked, clearly surprised. Who told you that? Everyone, she answered honestly. There was no anger in her voice. Only truth. Ethan looked around at the station, at the many species gathered there. Then he looked back at her. Everyone's wrong sometimes, he said. That simple sentence struck Lyra harder than any warning story ever had. Before she could respond, a loud voice echoed through the hall. All delegates report to the council. Chamber immediately. The station council was calling an emergency meeting. Aliens began to move quickly. The human group turned to leave as well. Ethan took one step back, then paused. He looked at Lyra. You'll be okay? He asked. Lyra hesitated. She had never been asked that by a stranger before, especially not by a human, I think. Yes, she said. Ethan smiled briefly. Good. Then he turned and walked away with the other humans. Lyra watched him go. The jacket felt heavier now, not in weight, but in meaning. Later that cycle, Lyra sat in a quiet observation room. Stars drifted slowly past the wide window. She still wore the jacket. No one had asked her to return it. Word of the incident spread quickly. Some aliens laughed. Some were angry. Some were curious. A human showed weakness, one said. No, another replied. A human showed strength. Lyra listened from the corner. Her people arrived soon after 2 Illyri representatives sent to escort her. Their faces tightened when they saw the jacket. You should not wear human items, one warned. Lyra held the fabric tighter. He helped me, she said, without asking for anything. That is how manipulation begins, the other replied. Lyra shook her head. No, I felt it. It was real. The Ilari exchanged uneasy looks. Later that night, Lyra couldn't sleep. Her thoughts kept returning to Ethan's eyes. Not cold, not cruel, just tired and kind. She replayed the moment in her mind again and again. The kneeling, the quiet voice, the warmth. For the first time since her homeworld was destroyed, she did not feel alone in the universe. But peace never lasted long. At Orion Gate, a distant alarm began to hum low and deep. Not an emergency alarm. A warning signal. Lyra stood and moved closer to the window. Far beyond the station, something dark drifted through space. Too large. Too silent. Her translator chimed with an incoming alert. Unidentified vessels detected. Unknown intent. All delegates remain on standby. Lyra's chest tightened. Humans were still on the station. She looked down at the jacket again, for reasons she could not explain. One thought echoed clearly in her mind. I hope the human is safe. Outside, the stars flickered as shadowy ships moved closer, and the simple act that had changed everything was about to be tested. The warning lights inside Orion Gate shifted from blue to deep amber. That color meant only one thing. Danger was close. Lyra stood frozen near the observation window, her thin fingers gripping the edge of the table. Outside the glass, the dark shapes in space were clearer now. Massive ships, silent, moving without lights. They were not human ships. The station's translator chimed again. Unknown vessels have ignored all hails. All civilians remain in secured zones. A quiet fear spread through the station like cold smoke. Lyra's heart raced. Her people had taught her that humans brought war wherever they went. If these ships attacked, humans would fight. And when humans fought, everyone suffered. That was the story. She looked down at the jacket still wrapped around her shoulders. Then why did he help me? She wondered. The doors to the observation room slid open. 2 armed station guards entered, their weapons glowing faintly. Miss Lyra, one said, you must move to a shelter. Lyra nodded and followed them into the hall. The station felt different now, louder, tense. Aliens moved quickly, speaking in sharp whispers. As they turned a corner, Lyra saw the human delegation again. They stood near a tactical display, calm but alert. Some checked weapons. Others studied the screen. Ethan was there. Without thinking, Lyra slowed her steps. Ethan noticed her instantly. His eyes met hers. For a moment, the noise of the station faded. You okay? He asked, walking toward her. Lyra swallowed. There are enemy ships, she said. This is when humans become dangerous. Ethan stopped. That's what you were told? He asked quietly. Lyra nodded. My world burned during a war, she said. Everyone said humans were the reason. Ethan took a slow breath. My world burned too, he replied. That shocked her. I was a child, he continued. Raiders attacked our colony. Not aliens, not monsters. Just people who wanted more. Lyra's eyes widened. So humans destroy humans? She asked. Sometimes, Ethan said honestly. And sometimes we protect others. Before she could respond, the station shook violently. Lights flickered. A deep impact echoed through the hull. The attack had begun. Alarms screamed now. Red light flooded the hall. Breach on outer ring. A voice shouted. Aliens ran. Some screamed. Some froze. Lyra felt the old fear rise again, sharp and crushing. Her legs refused to move. Ethan grabbed her arm, not roughly, but firm enough to ground her. Stay behind me, he said. Another explosion rocked the station. A section of the ceiling collapsed nearby. Smoke filled the air. Lyra covered her head. Trembling, Ethan stood in front of her, shielding her body with his own. She felt it then. The truth. This human was afraid too, but he didn't run. Enemy drones burst through the breach, black, sharp, and fast. They fired energy bolts into the hall. A station guard fell. Ethan moved without hesitation. He pulled Lyra down behind a fallen pillar and signaled his team. Human soldiers advanced, not shouting, not boasting, just moving with focus and purpose. Didn't chase glory, they defended. Lyra watched in disbelief as Ethan fired only when needed, guiding civilians toward exits between shots. He checked on wounded aliens, dragging them to safety, even under fire. This makes no sense. Lyra whispered. One of the drones turned toward them. Its weapon charged. Ethan stepped out. No! Lyra cried. The shot fired, but Ethan shoved a damaged shield panel into place, taking the force of the blast. He stumbled, falling to one knee. Pain flashed across his face. Lyra didn't think. She ran to him. Her people would call this foolish, weak, dangerous. She grabbed Ethan's arm and pulled him back behind cover. "You are injured," she said. Voice shaking. Ethan winced but smiled faintly. Worth it. The drone exploded moments later as another human soldier destroyed it. Silence fell brief, uneasy. Lyra looked at Ethan, truly looked at him. He was bleeding. Tired. Human, not a monster. Her hands still trembled, but something inside her was changing. Fear was cracking. Old lies were breaking apart. "You protected me," she said softly. Ethan nodded. "That's what we do." Lyra shook her head. "No, that is what you do." Outside the hall, the battle raged on. The station shook again. Harder this time. A voice echoed over the comms. "Multiple breaches detected. We are losing ground." Ethan pushed himself to his feet. "We need to move," he said. "This isn't over." Lyra stood beside him, still wearing his jacket, still afraid, but no longer blind. As they ran toward the inner corridors, Lyra realized something important. Her fear of humans was no longer complete, and when fear breaks, something far stronger takes its place. The inner corridors of Orion Gate shook as if the station itself was in pain. Metal groaned. Lights flickered. Emergency doors slammed shut behind fleeing civilians. Lyra ran beside Ethan, her steps unsteady but determined. The human jacket flapped around her legs, far too large. Yet it felt like armor. Another explosion thundered through the station. "This way!" Ethan shouted, guiding a group of civilians toward a reinforced shelter. Lyra could feel the fear around her raw, sharp, overwhelming. Her species sensed emotion strongly, and the panic almost crushed her. Ilari were not warriors. They survived by avoiding danger, not facing it. But today, danger had followed them. The shelter doors were almost sealed when a scream echoed from behind. "Help, please." Lyra turned. A young alien child, small, four-armed, terrified, was trapped under fallen debris. Smoke filled the corridor. Fire crept closer. The guards hesitated. The structure was unstable. "Leave it," someone shouted. "The door must close." Lyra's heart pounded. This was the moment her people feared most, the moment where survival demanded cruelty. Ethan looked at the child. Then he looked at Lyra, and without a word, he turned and ran toward the fire. "Ethan!" Lyra cried out. The shelter doors began to close. Lyra's instincts screamed at her to stay safe. But another voice, quiet, new and human, rose inside her. "If he can face fear, so can I." She ran after him. Heat burned her skin as smoke filled her lungs. The fallen beam was heavy, scorched and sparking. Ethan tried to lift it, muscles straining. "It's too heavy," he growled. Lyra placed her hands on the beam beside his. Ilari's strength was nothing compared to a human's, but Ilari's focus was unmatched. She closed her eyes and centered her breathing. "Lift. Now," she said. Together, they raised the beam just enough. The child scrambled free, crying but alive. Ethan grabbed the child and turned back. The ceiling collapsed. A blast of force threw them apart. Lyra hit the floor hard, pain flashing through her side. The world blurred. She heard shouting, distant, muffled, then silence. When Lyra opened her eyes, she was alone in smoke and darkness. Her communicator crackled weakly. "Lyra, can you hear me?" Ethan's voice broke through. "I'm here," she whispered, but the corridor between them was gone. Twisted metal blocked the path. Fire burned hot and close. Ethan's voice came again, louder now. "I'm getting you out." "No," Lyra shouted. "The structure will collapse." A pause, then he spoke quietly. "I'm not leaving you." Tears filled Lyra's eyes. No one had ever said that to her before. Not since her homeworld fell. Footsteps approached through the smoke. Enemy drones. Lyra saw their red sensors glow. She had no weapon. Her heart raced. Then she remembered something her people had forgotten long ago. Ilari were not fighters, but they were listeners. She closed her eyes and reached outward, with her senses feeling the energy flow of the station. The vibrations in the metal, the rhythm of the drones. She found the weakness. With shaking hands, Lyra reached a nearby control panel and rerouted power, overloading the section. The drones sparked and collapsed. Lifeless. Lyra collapsed with them. Moments later, metal was torn away. Ethan appeared through the smoke, blood on his face, eyes wide with relief. "There you are," he said. He lifted her carefully, as if she were made of glass. Back in the shelter, medics rushed forward. Aliens stared in stunned silence as Lyra and Ethan emerged together. "You disobeyed orders." A guard snapped at Lyra. She didn't care. She looked at Ethan. "You said humans are protectors," she said softly. "I did not believe you." Ethan met her gaze. "And now?" Lyra held the jacket tighter around herself. "Now," she said, voice steady, "I trust you." Outside the shelter, the battle still raged. The station was not yet safe, but something far more powerful than weapons had been forged. Trust. And trust, once given, changes the course of wars. The shelter doors finally sealed shut with a heavy metallic thud. Inside, the air was thick with smoke, fear, and silence. Lyra sat on the floor, her back against the cold wall. Medics moved around her, checking her injuries, but she barely noticed them. Her eyes were fixed on Ethan. He was sitting a few steps away, his arm wrapped in a quick bandage, blood seeping through the fabric. He looked exhausted, broken, still standing, still human. Around them, aliens whispered. She rerouted power alone. She saved them. She followed a human into fire. Lyra heard it all. She lowered her head, unsure how to feel. Her body trembled again, but this time it was not fear. It was the weight of what she had done. An Ilari elder stepped forward, her glowing eyes sharp with disbelief. "You disobeyed every survival law we have," the elder said. "Why?" Lyra looked up slowly. "Because he did," she replied, pointing at Ethan. The elder frowned. "That is not an answer." Lyra stood, though her legs shook. "He chose danger so others could live," she said. "If that is foolish, then perhaps we have been wrong for a very long time." The shelter shook again. Dust fell from the ceiling. Human officer entered, his face tense. "Enemy forces are pushing inward," he announced. "We're running out of time." Panic rose instantly. Some aliens cried out. Some backed away. Some froze. Ethan pushed himself to his feet. "Listen," he said loudly. "Running won't save you. Standing together might." A reptilian alien laughed bitterly. "You expect us to fight?" "We are not soldiers," Ethan nodded. "Neither were most humans when we lost our first colonies." Lyra stepped beside him. "They are afraid," she said softly. "So were we," Ethan replied. "Fear doesn't mean weakness. It means you care." The words spread through the shelter like quiet fire. A heavy blast echoed nearby. The enemy was close. Lyra felt something shift inside her chest. The fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She stepped forward. My people sense energy, she said, her voice growing stronger. The station is still alive. It can fight with us. The room fell silent. What do you mean? A guard asked. Lyra closed her eyes and reached outward again. The station's systems whispered back, damaged, wounded, but responsive. I can guide power through the corridors, she said. Redirect shields, create traps. Ethan looked at her with surprise. You can do that? She nodded. With help, he smiled, despite the pain. Then let's give them hell. Humans moved quickly, coordinating with station guards. Aliens hesitated, then slowly stepped forward, one by one. A merchant. A technician. A medic, not warriors but willing. Lyra stood at a control hub, her hands glowing faintly as she focused. Screens lit up around her. Doors sealed, floors shifted. Energy surged. The first wave of enemy drones entered the corridor. They never made it far. The floor collapsed beneath them. Shield walls snapped shut. Turrets activated. Humans advanced behind cover, precise and disciplined. Aliens followed, not because they were ordered, because they chose to. Lyra watched it all unfold, her heart racing. This was not chaos. This was unity. An explosion rocked the far end of the hall. Ethan was thrown against a wall, hard. He didn't get up. Lyra screamed his name and ran. She reached him, dropping to her knees. Ethan! She cried. His eyes fluttered open. Hey, he said weakly. Guess I finally found my limit. No, Lyra said, her hands shaking. You cannot stop, he smiled faintly. Looks like you don't need me anymore. She shook her head. Fiercely, you showed me who we can be, she said. Do not leave now. Enemy footsteps echoed nearby. Lyra turned, eyes burning with determination. She stood over Ethan. And for the first time in Alari history, she did not run, she opened. Every channel at once. Power surged through the station, blinding and loud. Enemy systems fried instantly. The corridor went silent. Lyra collapsed beside Ethan, drained but alive. The comms crackled. Enemy forces are retreating, a voice announced. They're pulling back. Cheers erupted through the station. Ethan let out a weak laugh. See? He said. Told you fear wasn't the end. Lyra looked at him, tears streaming freely now. No, she whispered. It was the beginning. Around them, aliens and humans stood together, breathing hard, wounded. Victorious. Not because they were the strongest species, but because courage had spread. And once courage becomes contagious, no enemy can stop it. The fighting ended slowly, like a storm moving away from the horizon. Orion Gate was scarred, burned, and broken, but it still stood. Emergency lights glowed softly now. Smoke drifted in thin lines. The wounded were carried to medical bays. The dead were covered with quiet respect. Lyra sat beside Ethan on a low bench near the command deck. Both were exhausted. Both were alive. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The jacket still rested on Lyra's shoulders. Around them, aliens watched the humans differently now. There was no fear in their eyes, only curiosity. And something close to awe. The Station Council, assembled within the hour. Representatives of dozens of species filled the chamber. Some were injured, some leaned on supports. But all were present. Lyra was called forward. Her legs trembled as she stood before them. She had never spoken in front of such power before. She was not a leader, not a warrior, just a survivor. You acted without authority, a council member said. You interfered with military response. Lyra took a slow breath. Yes, she said simply. Murmurs filled the room. A tall, scaled delegate leaned forward. Why should we not punish such recklessness? Lyra looked around the chamber. She saw humans standing quietly at the edges, tired, bruised, watching, not demanding. She thought of Ethan shielding her from fire, of humans carrying wounded aliens, of hands reaching out in chaos instead of fists. Because of them, Lyra said. She turned toward the humans. My people taught me humans were monsters, she continued. We were told they bring war, that they feel nothing. Her voice shook, but she did not stop. I believed those lies. I feared them. I avoided them. She touched the jacket, but when I was freezing and alone, a human knelt instead of walking away. The room fell silent. He gave warmth when he had little, Lyra said. He stayed when fear told him to run. He protected lives that were not his own. She lifted her head. That is not a monster. A human officer stepped forward. We didn't do this for praise, he said calmly. We did it because it was right. Lyra nodded. That, she said, is why the universe must see humans clearly. She faced the council again. Humans are not perfect, she admitted. They fight, they fail, they bleed. A pause, but when darkness comes, they stand between it and everyone else. The council chamber remained silent. Then something unexpected happened, one by one. Alien delegates rose to their feet. Not all, but enough. A mechanical species spoke next. Our sensors recorded human units prioritizing civilian rescue over enemy pursuit. It said, this behavior is statistically inefficient. Ethan, listening from the back, muttered, sounds about right. Soft laughter rippled through the chamber. Another delegate stood. My world remembers humans as warriors, she said. Today I saw guardians. The final vote was swift. Orion Gate would formally recognize humanity as protectors of the Gate, a role never before given to a single species. The title echoed across the station. After the council dismissed, Lyra returned to Ethan. They listened, she said, still in disbelief. Ethan smiled tiredly. Guess we made a good impression. Lyra hesitated, then slowly removed the jacket from her shoulders. She held it out to him with both hands. I believe this belongs to you, she said. Ethan looked at it, then at her. Keep it, he replied. You earned it. Lyra's eyes filled again. I will, she said, so I never forget. Outside, the wide windows, enemy ships vanished into the dark. Stars shone calmly once more. The universe had watched Orion Gate burn, and it had learned something new, that humanity's greatest weapon was not its strength, not its technology, but its choice. To care, even when no one was watching. The Orion Gate station was quiet for the first time in many cycles. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of survival. Repaired lights glowed softly across the long halls. Burn marks remained on the walls, not hidden, not erased. They were reminders. Lyra walked slowly through the station garden, a place of artificial light and living plants brought from 100 worlds. The human jacket still rested on her shoulders. It had become part of her now, across the glass ceiling. Stars moved like distant memories. Ethan stood near the railing, looking out into space. His arm was in a proper brace now, and his movements were slower, careful. He looked older than before the battle, but lighter too. You should be resting, Lyra said as she approached. Ethan smiled without turning. So should you. They stood together in silence. I never thanked you, Lyra said quietly. Ethan finally looked at her. You already did, she shook her head. No, for more than the jacket. For standing when running was easier. Ethan looked down at his hands. Humans learned something a long time ago, he said. If we don't protect each other, no one else will. Lyra thought of her destroyed homeworld, of the fear that shaped her childhood. Maybe that is why you protect strangers, she said. You know what loss feels like. Ethan nodded once. A station announcement echoed softly. All delegates are clear to depart. Ships prepared to leave. Lives were moving forward. Lyra felt a sudden tightness in her chest. You are leaving, she said. Yeah, Ethan replied. Orders. She looked down at the jacket. This was given to me in fear, she said. but it stayed with me in courage. Ethan watched her carefully. Lyra slowly removed the jacket and folded it neatly. Then she held it out. "This time," she said, "I return it, not because I must, but because I trust you will come back." Ethan's eyes widened slightly. He took the jacket. "I will," he said. "I promise." Lyra reached into her pocket and removed a small crystal shard Ilari memory glass. "If you ever forget," she said softly, "touch this. It holds gratitude." Ethan accepted it with both hands, understanding its value without needing explanation. The docking alarms sounded. It was time. Ethan turned to leave, then stopped. "You know," he said, "the universe is still cold out there." Lyra smiled, tears shining but not falling. "Then take warmth with you," she replied. He nodded, then walked away toward the departing ships. Lyra watched until he disappeared. Days passed. News spread. Stories traveled faster than ships, across trade lanes and war zones. The tale was told. A human who knelt. An alien who trusted. A jacket that stopped fear. Worlds once closed to humans opened their gates. Not because of treaties, but because of belief. Lyra stood before the Ilari Council on her home colony months later. She wore no armor, no weapons, only the memory of warmth. "Fear taught us to hide," she told them. "Humans taught me to stand." The council listened. Far away, Ethan touched the crystal in his pocket as his ship crossed into unknown space. He smiled quietly. He did not know if he would see Lyra again, but he knew something important. Kindness had outlived the war. And somewhere in the cold universe, warmth remained.